No one expected what was about to happen when Barack Obama tried to publicly shame Karoline Leavitt during a live forum on democracy and disinformation, but they had no idea what was coming next. Right before we jump into this wild story, tell her, where are you watching from? You might be surprised how far this reaches. It was a packed auditorium at Columbia University, wall-to-wall with journalists, political elites, and live streamers eating up every word. The event, billed as a conversation on truth in modern America, had all the makings of a headline-grabbing spectacle. Tension crackled like static in the air, the atmosphere razor-sharp with anticipation. Over 20 million were watching online, hashtags like Kinder Karoline vs. Obama and democracy debate trending within minutes. On one side of the stage, Barack Obama, confident, polished, a legacy president with millions still hanging on his every word. But tonight he wasn't here as the smiling diplomat. He came armed with criticism. Frustrated by a new generation of conservative voices rising fast and loud, he saw Karoline as a symbol of dangerous rhetoric and a chance to make an example out of her. On the other side, Karoline Leavitt, calm, poised, underestimated. The youngest former Trump White House staffer to run for Congress, now a rising star in political media. She wasn't just defending her views. She was defending a generation tired of being dismissed. Her reputation, her movement, her entire cause was on the line. Obama's tone, controlled but biting. Karoline's mission, truth over narrative. The stakes, generational trust, political legacy, and the integrity of the American voice. And the moment Karoline opened her mouth, the entire room shifted. The cameras rolled. Lights bathed the stage in a stark white glow. The moderator barely finished the introduction when Barack Obama leaned forward, flashing that signature half-smile, the kind that could disarm a room but tonight carried a sharpened edge. "You know, Karoline," Obama said with mock warmth, his voice smooth as velvet, "it's impressive how confidently you speak on democracy, given how little experience you have protecting it." The crowd chuckled politely, elitist, smug. Laughter from the first few rows, filled with academics, former staffers, and old DC media gatekeepers. Obama continued, voice calm, calculated, precise. "I spent 8 years in the White House being told what I couldn't say. You've spent 2 years on cable news being told what will get clicks. That's not the same battlefield. Let's not confuse shouting with substance." Karoline didn't flinch. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. No blinking, no shifting, just laser focus. But Obama wasn't done. "You promote yourself as a fighter for truth, but you supported an administration that labeled verified stories as fake news and pushed unfounded election conspiracies. How exactly do you define truth, Karoline? Is it whatever your base wants to hear?" The question wasn't a real question. It was a trap laced in applause bait. And the room took the bait. A murmur of approval rolled through the auditorium. One progressive student in the back even shouted, "She can't handle this," drawing laughs from the balcony. Karoline's mic was live. The world was watching. Any defensiveness, any stumble, even a wrong breath, would validate the narrative Obama had just constructed. But instead of recoiling, Karoline smiled. Not the kind of smile you fake when you're nervous. The kind you flash when you've already seen the punch coming and know exactly how to counter. She leaned into her mic, voice clear and steady. "President Obama, you spent 8 years being told what you couldn't say. By your advisors, your donors, your party. I spent my time speaking for people who have never been allowed to speak at all." The audience quieted. "You talk about protecting democracy. But how many voices were silenced under your leadership? Journalists targeted by the DOJ? Whistleblowers, prosecuted harder than Wall Street bankers? Your administration expanded the surveillance state more than any president before you, and now you want to lecture me on truth?" A few jaws dropped. The moderator visibly straightened in his chair. Obama's smile had frozen. Karoline continued, calm but pointed. "And as for clicks, yes, I use platforms that reach millions, because I don't have Netflix documentaries and legacy media covering for me. I reach the people directly, not through filtered narratives. That's the new battlefield, and it terrifies you. A gasp, then a single clap, then two. Suddenly, a small ripple of applause rolled through the midsection of the crowd. A few students leaned forward, intrigued. A political podcaster in the front row typed furiously into his phone. Obama narrowed his eyes. Not angry, calculating. He hadn't expected her to be this poised, this prepared. And the audience, once squarely in his corner, was starting to shift. But Caroline wasn't done. You know what the difference is between you and me? She said, voice unwavering. You believe in protecting institutions. I believe in protecting people. And when those two things clash, I don't pick the institution. The line landed. Like a grenade. Phones lit up. Tweets flew. Caroline just flipped Obama's truth line back on him. This is insane. Boom! She just called out surveillance and fake transparency live on stage. This isn't the takedown Obama thought it would be. She's winning this. The moderator tried to cut in, but Obama raised his hand subtly. He wasn't done. He leaned in, colder now, his voice clipped with precision. You're clever. I'll give you that. But clever doesn't equal correct. You speak about surveillance and transparency, yet you supported an administration that tried to overturn an election that refused to accept verified results. That's not truth, that's propaganda. He sat back like a man expecting the checkmate to land. The tension hung like a wire about to snap. Caroline didn't blink. What terrifies you, Mr. President, isn't propaganda. It's the fact that your version of truth is no longer the only one out there. You say we refuse to accept election results. Well, millions of Americans felt they were never heard in the first place. Maybe instead of labeling them as dangerous, you should ask why they feel that way. The audience fell silent. Because if you truly believe in democracy, you listen to everyone, not just the ones who clap for you. And then it happened. A pause. Then thunderous applause, not polite, not forced, but real. Raw approval from an audience that came expecting to see her fall, but was now starting to rise. Obama's face didn't change, but his jaw had set. The cameras caught it. The tweets exploded. She just stole the crowd from Obama, holy hell. Caroline is dangerous on this stage. She's winning hearts fast. But that was just the beginning. What happened next changed everything. Obama had tasted the edge of Caroline's composure, and he didn't like it. He leaned forward now, both elbows on the table, the smile long gone. The room was tense, the air thick. His voice sharpened, not with volume, but with surgical precision. So let me get this straight, Obama said slowly. You're lecturing me on democracy while defending people who stormed the Capitol, who waved flags calling for the death of politicians, who denied reality because they didn't like the results? He cocked his head. Do you even hear yourself, Caroline? Or do you just say what polls well on Twitter? Caroline opened her mouth to respond, but he cut in. Fast and sharp now, no longer the calm statesman but the prosecutor in full attack mode. You talk about protecting voices. What about the Capitol officers who were beaten? The secretaries who hid under desks? The Republican officials who certified results and received death threats? You're defending chaos. Gasps. Now it was getting personal. The audience shifted uncomfortably. A student whispered, "She's done." Another leaned into his friend. He just crushed her with that. The moderator glanced nervously at the producers. Was it going too far? But Obama wasn't done. You're not a victim, Caroline. You've been promoted by billionaires, praised by Tucker, backed by political machines who see you as a pretty face with sharp teeth. You say you're for the people, but you've never lived paycheck to paycheck, never feared the system, never been on the outside looking in. He pointed now, not accusatory but theatrical. You want to talk truth? Here's the truth. You are exactly what you pretend to fight against. The audience sat frozen. It was the kill shot, the moment he assumed would fracture her. Discredit? Or reduce her from opponent to footnote, but Caroline didn't even shift in her chair. She took a beat. Not rushed, not defensive. Then she leaned into her mic, eyes never leaving Obama's. That's the difference between us, Mr. President. You assume anyone who disagrees with you must be misled, or privileged, or dangerous. Because in your world, you are always the enlightened one, the hero. The audience stayed silent, hanging on every syllable. But let me be clear, I condemn violence, I always have. But what I won't condemn, what I won't apologize for, is asking why so many Americans felt ignored, silenced, abandoned by the institutions you defended, including your own party. Obama's face hardened slightly. Caroline's voice rose, not in anger, but purpose. I come from a blue-collar family in New Hampshire. My dad plowed snow. My mom worked retail. I didn't inherit a Senate seat. I didn't have donors writing my future before I was 30. I built everything with my voice. And yes, it's loud, because millions of people still aren't being heard. A flicker of reaction, a surprised nod from a journalist stage left. A black woman in the third row whispered, "That part." Caroline stood now, not grandstanding, but reclaiming the space. You call me a puppet of billionaires, but you vacationed with them, fundraised with them, spoke their language in private while promising hope and change in public. You are the institution, and if that makes me the rebel, fine. At least I'm honest about what I stand for. Boom. An audible murmur rippled through the audience. The mood shifted again. Even the moderator blinked, stunned. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I'm not pretending anymore. And the people who support me? They're not violent. They're angry. And they have every right to be. Because while elites were drafting climate pledges, they were losing their homes, their jobs, their dignity. The camera panned across the audience. Someone whispered, "She's speaking truth." Another, "Obama's in trouble." Then Caroline delivered the line that cut through every talking point like glass. You don't lose faith in democracy overnight. You lose it when hope becomes a soundbite and never a solution. The crowd went still. Even Obama looked shaken, not humiliated, but visibly unsettled. For the first time, the spotlight felt less certain. Social media lit up. She just flipped Obama's legacy against him live. You can feel the crowd turning. Even the lefties are listening. Caroline just proved she's not just another pundit, she's dangerous to the narrative. She sat back down, and for the first time that night, Barack Obama had no immediate retort. He sat in silence, adjusting his jacket. The audience didn't cheer wildly. They didn't need to. The tension had told the story. Caroline had held her ground and more, but the next move from Obama would be his biggest mistake yet. Obama adjusted his cufflink, leaned back into his chair and smiled. But this time, it was rehearsed, calculated, like a chess master who had just baited their opponent into one final humiliating move. "All right," he said smoothly, his voice regaining that familiar polish. "Let's elevate the conversation." He reached into the folder in front of him. Retrieving a single sheet of paper, the audience leaned forward. "Since you seem to believe you represent the people and understand constitutional freedom so intimately," Obama continued, "let's talk about the First Amendment." He held up the paper for all to see. "This," he said, "is the transcript from the recent Supreme Court ruling on Castro vs. Bureau of Disinformation, a case that redefined the limits of government oversight on social media content during elections." Caroline's eyes narrowed slightly. She knew the case. The ruling had been dense, hundreds of pages. Legal scholars had debated its implications for weeks. Obama continued, "Please, Caroline, since you're so committed to the Constitution, maybe you can quote the specific section by paragraph that explains how the ruling protected false information under the banner of free speech." He smirked. The crowd gasped. It was a gotcha question, designed not to seek truth but to expose a lack of legal expertise. Not even seasoned attorneys would memorize the specifics Obama just referenced. "Take your time," Obama added smugly. "I'll wait." A chuckle from a few in the back. A couple eye rolls from DC interns, A smug grin from a well-known progressive blogger in the second row. This was it. The trap. Caroline didn't flinch. She didn't look at the moderator, or her notes, or the camera. She just looked at Obama, and slowly stood. Her voice was quiet, controlled. Mr. President, with all due respect, if you have to quote obscure paragraph numbers to win a debate, you've already lost touch with the people you claim to defend. A murmur. Obama's smile faded slightly. But since you asked, she said, taking a breath, you're referring to Section 4, Paragraph 3, where the court stated, and I quote, "The regulation of misinformation, absent a clear and present danger, shall not override an individual's right to expression on privately owned platforms, regardless of the potential societal discomfort that speech may cause." The room went still. Obama blinked. She was right. Word for word, Caroline wasn't finished. But let me tell you what the court was really saying, because that's what matters. They weren't defending lies, they were defending the public's right to judge for themselves. Because the moment the government decides what's true and what isn't, we no longer live in a democracy. We live in a narrative. Now her voice rose, each word crisp and clear, and I find it ironic that you, who ran on hope and change, are now the ones suggesting we silence uncomfortable voices to protect fragile truths. Shock, then whispers, then claps. Obama tried to interrupt. That's not what I said. But Caroline didn't pause. You set a trap. You wanted me to misquote the law. You thought I wouldn't do my homework. But I did. Because unlike some people in Washington, I don't speak to impress professors. I speak to defend people who don't have Harvard degrees and DC speechwriters to clean up their mess. Boom! The audience erupted, first in stunned silence, then a wave of claps, then full-on applause. A young law student near the back turned to her professor. Did she just quote that case perfectly? The professor, a lifelong Democrat, nodded, jaw tight. Twitter exploded. Caroline just passed Obama's legal test with flying colors, live. She turned the trap into a TED Talk. I'm not even mad. Love her or hate her, this girl is a problem. Obama exhaled slowly, and then Caroline dropped her voice, cool again, almost casual. But let's be honest, Mr. President, that wasn't really about the First Amendment, was it? That was about reminding everyone that you're still the smartest guy in the room. She stepped forward. But maybe, just maybe, smart doesn't always mean right. Gasps. Someone shouted, "Whoo!" from the audience. And as the moderator tried to regain control, Caroline turned back to her seat, glanced at Obama one last time, and smiled. And just when everyone thought it was over, Caroline dropped a final bombshell. Obama's face, usually unreadable, polished, practiced, had cracked, just enough to betray something rare. Uncertainty. He shuffled the paper in front of him, eyes scanning it again, as if hoping he'd missed something, that Caroline had misquoted. After all, but she hadn't. The audience knew it, and so did he. Let's not pretend quoting one paragraph makes someone a constitutional expert, he said, his tone tighter now, less charming. We're talking about decades of precedent here, generations of nuance. But the words felt hollow, a retreat into generalities. Caroline didn't interrupt. She just tilted her head slightly, eyebrows raised, waiting. Obama fumbled again, trying to pivot. The real issue isn't legal minutiae, it's the rise of misinformation, of dangerous rhetoric, dressed as patriotism, and that's something we need to talk about seriously, not sensationalize for headlines. It sounded rehearsed. The crowd didn't applaud. One intern near the stage whispered, "He's deflecting." A CNN producer silently scribbled, "Tone. Shift. Losing grip." Caroline stepped forward again, voice calm but cutting. "Dangerous rhetoric, Mr. President? Is that what we're calling dissent now?" The room tensed. "Let me remind you, we're on this stage today because I dared to question how unelected bureaucrats were flagging speech behind closed doors, while your administration cheered them on. Obama opened his mouth to respond, but she kept going. Faster, now gaining momentum. You say you want a serious conversation? Then let's have one. Let's talk about your Department of Homeland Security and the Disinformation Governance Board. A visible wince from Obama. You dismissed it as a conspiracy until your own people admitted it existed. You called it necessary oversight while Americans called it what it really was. Orwellian. Murmurs. Audible. A few claps. A she's right from somewhere on the left. And when people pushed back, when people like me demanded transparency, you didn't respond with answers, you responded with sarcasm, with smirks, with that look you just gave me 5 minutes ago. She turned toward the crowd now, speaking directly to them, not him. But you're not laughing anymore, are you? The shift was undeniable. Obama leaned back again, but it was no longer confident. It was defensive. His fingers tapped against the podium. His jaw tightened, and Caroline didn't stop. You once said the arc of the moral universe bends toward justice. Well, maybe it does, but justice doesn't come from a White House press secretary or an Ivy League podium. It comes when everyday Americans, teachers, truck drivers, single moms are allowed to speak without fear of being silenced. The applause started small, then swelled. And if quoting the Constitution, if challenging the approved narrative, makes me dangerous in your eyes, then maybe this country needs a little more danger. Standing ovation. Obama didn't move. He looked toward the moderator, clearly hoping to pivot, to close the segment, but it was too late. The audience had flipped. She turned the courtroom into a lecture hall, and Obama looked like the student. No teleprompter can save you from someone who's lived what they're saying. Caroline's not just debating, she's burying the legacy. One older audience member leaned toward a friend. This feels historic. Even the moderator, normally a strict neutral presence, glanced sideways at Obama with an expression that read, "Do you want to continue?" But Caroline, never one to waste momentum, walked right back to the center of the stage. "Mr. President," she said, her voice gentle now, even respectful. "You changed the world once, I don't deny that. But times change. And today, this moment, this isn't about you anymore." She paused. The silence was so heavy it felt like the room had stopped breathing. "It's about who we trust with truth, and I don't think the American people trust gatekeepers anymore." Boom. More applause. Some audience members stood again. Reporters were whispering into phones. The entire energy of the room had flipped. Obama, still trying to salvage control, muttered, "Well, that's your interpretation." But Caroline had already turned, already taken her seat, confident, unshaken. And just before the moderator could end the segment, she glanced sideways and added, "But the final moment of truth was still to come." Obama looked out across the room like a man trying to remember how he ever had control of it. The applause had died down, but the air hadn't cleared. He smiled, but it was forced, like a politician posing for a picture after losing an election. Then, he tried again, one last attempt to grab the wheel. "You know, Caroline," he began, chuckling in that familiar, disarming tone that once silenced rooms and captured nations, "you remind me a bit of myself back in the day." Laughter from a few loyalists in the back. A desperate attempt to humanize himself, reclaim charm, reframe her as a youthful overstep. Idealistic, sharp-tongued, certain the world is black and white. But let me give you a bit of advice from someone who's been there. Sometimes what sounds good in a soundbite doesn't make good governance. Caroline tilted her head slightly, no expression on her face. Obama pushed forward, sensing this might be his last window. "You can win an argument, sure. Get a few likes, a few headlines. But what you're doing, it's performative. It's not leadership, it's noise. And history won't remember the loudest voice in the room, it remembers the wisest." There it was. A masterful pivot. The room was quiet. For a second, just a second, it looked like he might have clawed back the higher ground, until Caroline stood up, walked back to the center of the stage, and delivered the final word. "Mr. President, You said history remembers the wisest. Maybe. She paused, stepped closer to the front of the stage. But history also remembers who stood up, even when it wasn't popular, when it was easier to sit down, when speaking the truth meant being labeled dangerous. Obama blinked. Caroline's voice rose, not angry, not arrogant, but precise. You had your moment. You had the cameras, the crowds, you inspired people. I was one of them. Gasps. Yeah, I watched you win in 2008. I believed you when you said, yes, we can. I told my father, a blue-collar New Hampshire mechanic, that we were about to see real change. Her voice cracked, but just for a breath. But then you handed the country over to unelected tech giants. You watched Americans get censored, shamed, locked out of conversations. You didn't stop it. You cheered it on. Obama looked stunned. This wasn't a political attack anymore, it was personal. So no, I'm not doing this for likes or sound bites. I'm doing this because I watched a generation lose faith in truth itself, and someone had to say it out loud. She walked over to the moderator's table, picked up a single sheet of paper, held it in the air. This is the DHS memo your administration said didn't exist. I got it through FOIA. It shows collaboration between government agencies and tech platforms to suppress stories about inflation, Afghanistan, even crime stats. She turned it to face the cameras. If standing here and exposing this makes me loud, then turn up the volume. The room exploded. Standing ovation. Multiple camera flashes fired off. One reporter muttered under their breath, "This is going viral in 10 minutes. Obama didn't speak. He just stared, hands clasped, lips tight. Someone in the audience shouted, "Say something." Someone else, "You can't." And Caroline, still holding the paper, looked him in the eye and said quietly, "You were the promise, but I became the proof." Dead silence. Then thunderous applause, rolling, relentless. Obama stood, nodded slowly, nothing left to say, and walked off stage. The camera zoomed in on Caroline's face, calm, unapologetic, proud. She didn't just win, she ended a legacy. Caroline just became the future in front of our eyes. Obama got beat with receipts. This is historic. And just when the crowd thought it was over, a voice from the back shouted, "Caroline, there's something you need to see outside. Now." She turned, confused, paused, walked toward the edge of the stage. And that's when the real shock came next. The echo of the standing ovation still hung in the air as Obama slipped quietly through the side curtain. No cameras followed. No reporters rushed to his defense. For the first time in recent memory, the great orator had no comeback. No more applause. No more illusions. He was gone. Not in disgrace. Not in handcuffs. But in silence. A slow fade into irrelevance. The stage now belonged to Caroline Levitt. She stood in the center, lit by the spotlight, her voice carrying not just over the crowd, but across every screen live streaming this moment across America. "You know," she said slowly, holding the wrinkled DHS document in one hand, "I never came here expecting to win anything. I came because I was tired of watching this country get gaslit by its own leaders." She looked toward the audience. Some were still standing, some had tears in their eyes. "We're told that speaking out is divisive, that asking questions is dangerous, that the experts know best and that we should just sit down and trust them." She shook her head. "But if the last few years taught us anything, it's that truth doesn't trickle down from the top. It rises from the people." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. "And if we don't speak up, if we wait for someone else to challenge the lies, then we're already losing." She looked down briefly, then back up, her voice stronger. "I was just a girl from New Hampshire who believed in hope. But hope without honesty is just decoration. I still believe in this country. I still believe we can be better, but only if we're willing to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." The camera slowly zoomed in. Because in the end, intelligence, merit, and truth always rise, above arrogance and manipulation. The audience erupted once again, but Caroline raised a hand, calming them. She wasn't finished. We have a choice right now, to let this be just another viral moment, or to make it a turning point. A pause. If you believe that truth matters, if you believe that censorship is a threat to democracy, if you believe that no one, no matter how powerful, should be above accountability, she pointed at the camera, then share this video. Speak up. Demand transparency. Because the minute we stop questioning authority is the minute we lose everything worth fighting for. One last glance toward the exit where Obama had disappeared. He had a chance to inspire a generation, but I refuse to let him bury it, and neither should you. Cut to black on-screen text. Do you believe justice was served today, or was this just the beginning? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you believe in standing up for truth, share this video, and let's hold the powerful accountable. Caroline didn't just expose a man, she exposed a system, and now the nation is watching. End.